What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to Salty Runback, here to be your weekly intake of North American Developmental League of Legends. I am Graves, that is Hawk. We have a very important week coming up here for the NACL, the last week of regular season play before the playoffs of that main league. And in the qualifiers, we have just crowned Maryville University as our first qualifier champion, and we will actually be starting up the OQs just right now on Saturday. So it's a very quick turnaround here with the qualifiers. We have a lot of League of Legends to play here, and always a very exciting week to talk about some games here. Hawk, what do you think about all this?
Every week's a banger in North America. What can we say? You know, it's very quick turnaround, as you said. No downtime whatsoever. We're diving straight back in, which just means more work for us, which sounds like a bad thing, but it's actually a really good thing because we're so... Grace, we're always excited for it. I mean, Maryville, I'm feeling a little bit vindicated for way back when I said that they look like they're going to be the best roster. Now, that was before I knew all the rosters, so maybe a little bit easy for me to say, but they looked amazing. And so, I mean, shoot, I'm excited to see the second qualifier play out.
Hey, it's a nice callback to episode 1. That was one of the first big takes that you had on the show.
I know.
You know, Maryville is going to be best. They were the best. They won.
They were the best.
And looked pretty good throughout. Just some housekeeping things before we get things on the road. First of all, you got to stay tuned to the Salty Runback Twitch channel throughout the week. And actually, if you're watching this on Twitch right now, you might want to stay until basically the episode has been done premiering, because basically a couple of hours after, because just the way the scheduling works, 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific time, this Wednesday, that is the day of the reveal show for the second Open Qualifier, where we will be unveiling once again the 32 teams that have made it into the OQ. A lot of familiar faces, some new ones as well. And you know, right after that, once again, that stream, which will be on twitch.tv/alkbattery this time, will be making their way over to Salty Runback. We'll have a live episode reacting to all of the teams and all of our takes. Got some interesting, fun stuff planned for that.
Not a tier list this time. We got a different little approach coming up. Everyone will have that time to like get off the episode, get a late dinner. You know, right? This will end around 8. You can get a late dinner. You can take a shower, relax. Boom. Premiere the reveal show right on 2 hours later. Like, come on, could you ask for a better Wednesday evening? I certainly couldn't.
gonna be a fun time. I might have a midterm the next day, but that's gonna be, you know, we're just gonna
that's irrelevant. That's
take
irrelevant.
it head on. Yeah. Just seize the day.
This is the League of Legends midterm. Like,
actually, at the halfway
quite
point.
literally.
And adding on to that, this weekend we also will be streaming some of the Open Qualifier games here on Salty Runback as part of the community streaming program. Should be a good time as well. We're not entirely sure which team we want to cover just yet, as well as the fact that some of them are not announced. And the last thing before we head into our headlines is that you might notice by the time of this episode, but it's a bit of a shorter one, and that is because there is no part 2 for this episode. Unfortunately, we did have an interview scheduled with some players currently rostered to Godel Gamers. However, there's a couple of controversies that have emerged that I think are all very important things to deal with, but seems that I think us and the players mutually agree that probably would be the best time to promote them as much as we really wanted to hype some of them up. And so we thought it'd be best to wait until another time to talk to some of them until they have figured out the situation a little bit better and some of that news has, gone and hopefully been solved to an extent. So that's why there's no part 2. However, we are coming at you with 8 headlines instead of 5. So don't worry, there's still going to be a ton of stuff in terms of content this week. We have this show, also the reveal show reaction, and as well on top of that, some more games covered in the Open Qualifier.
You'll see our faces plenty. Yeah, like Grape said, we basically all just decided, us and the players, that like let's not draw a spotlight to anything, right? So we're not going to, and that's why we've got the extra headlines, as Grape said. So we got plenty of stuff to talk about. It's gonna be a fun one, even though there's no direct activity. But we'll be back with one for you all next week, and it'll be great. I promise, it'll be great.
Part of me honestly was like hoping that we did just get to have more headlines, because this is actually a really eventful week. A lot of really cool stuff happened.
There's a lot to talk about.
Yeah, in the NACL. So I'm pretty excited to just get into things, and I mean, we don't have to wait too much longer, Hawk. We've been on this main screen for a while. You might as well just transition over and get things started. We have a bunch of headlines today. The first one, of course, as we will transition, is about one of the teams that I definitely feel a bit vindicated on right now, Hawk. FLYQUEST Challengers went 4-0 this week. They had victories over 100 Thieves challengers and also Team Liquid challengers, and they actually just like looked really, really strong throughout. Winsome made his way back onto the roster, and Masu was finally in person, not stuck in ping hell, and this team looked really, really good, Hawk. I mean, the question is, they played against some of these top teams. They're still ninth place in the standings. I mean, are they really a threat to making their way towards that top of the table?
They sure as hell are. They just 2-0 at 100 Thieves Challengers, who a lot of people are starting to say is one of the best teams in the league. They're finally playing to that level that we talked about 2 weeks ago, 2 episodes ago. We were concerned about them. Well, all those concerns about 100 Thieves Challengers are gone, and now FlyQuest, they're really separating themselves from the bottom of the pack, and in fact, looking like they're going to contest up. I mean, Grapes, we were talking about this before the episode. There are 4 games separating FlyQuest, who is still currently our 9th place team, and Immortals Challengers, who sits below them at 10th. There is a pretty massive gap, and they have very, very clearly established that they are on the top side of that gap and not the bottom. Now, I'm still not going to, I think it's too early to say that they're definitely a top team, gonna make finals, easy peasy. But they are looking really good. And honestly, I think the reason why we can't say that maybe just speaks more to the strength of the top half of the table.
I think a lot of people were really, really high on this FlyQuest Challengers roster coming into the season. But I think a lot of people also forgot that although the top side of the map is remaining very, very similar, the bot lane of that team was Tomo and Diamond. And, we see how good Tomo and Diamond are right now.
Right.
And when it was just Masu on 100 ping and Kitong, who is a sub, and it just seemed like the team really wasn't able to find a sort of identity the same way that they did in 2022. I think that Diamond's a really great shot caller, and that probably helped out a lot. And hey, now Winsome is here. He's a great shot caller. I mean, I remember listening back to some different comms videos with Cloud9. He is very, very active in his communication, always looking to make sure that his team is on the same page. And I think we did actually see that a ton this week against Team Liquid and 100 Thieves. Masu looked really, really good on a lot of the different champions. There were a bunch of moments where I was watching Masu flash an Ash arrow or something, and I thought to myself, man, if he was on ping, that wouldn't have happened, and it just looked amazing. And Yuji and Spyrex, again, starting to come back as well as being a really, really solid mid jungle. I know I like to talk about this team a lot, Hawk, but I really do feel confident about this team entering the last half.
You've earned the right to want to talk about this team because they are worth talking about right now. I mean, it's actually really funny. There was a funny moment speaking of the Masu ping on the broadcast where Masu actually early cleansed, and the casters were like, "Oh, he's used to the 100 ping," which I thought was hilarious. But I mean, it's great, and also Winsome. I just want to briefly talk about him. Obviously, playing really well, and I know at the beginning of the split, I was excited to see Winsome on a roster and playing back in North America, but I was critical of his game. To bring up the Shaq meme, right? I was critical of his game, and clearly his time on over in ERLs and on FlyQuest main has really elevated this player. And I mean, Winsome is looking with a 4-game sample size a fucking amazing support, honestly. So
there's still been incidents here and there.
There's been incidents, but every great support has incidents. Let's be honest with ourselves. You need incidents to be a great support. So.
And it's not like we're saying Winsome is by far and away the best support.
No. But I'm super pleased to see the level that he's playing at right now, and if he can keep that up, good stuff.
It does seem like some of the problems that plagued him on Cloud9 and also on FlyQuest main, especially towards that Super Week where they did end up dropping a game. I mean, they're still there, of course, on the Challengers roster, but it does
still a
just
developmental
seem
piece. But
it still definitely seems much more whole, and especially just the leadership, and I think some of the just experienced shot calling that he provides. I don't know too much about Kitong, but I believe he was not as vocal as a piece on that team. I think Winsome actually is going to help them. And taking a look at their last 2 matches against Golden Guardians Challengers and Immortals Challengers, so they're potentially they still got some work to do, but they have the opportunity to climb up in the standings a little bit.
Golden Guardians against Fly is looking like it's going to be one of the most hyped matches the next week. I don't know if that's a hot take or not, but that's going to be a crazy match between 2 teams. I mean, it's hard to say that Fly is really hot right now, but Golden Guardians, they are blazing hot. They're 3rd in the standings. We all know I'm a big GGS stan, right? And then with FlyQuest getting hot, this could be a really big time matchup. But there's a lot of good matchups heading to the final week. It's hard to say it's the most hype, but
Yeah, we'll be talking about some of those as we move on to our next topic. We talked about Tomo and Diamond a little bit, and speaking of them, Tomo got promoted up into the LCS, and with that, Spawn, the original Dignitas LCS AD carry, who was receiving a ton of backlash over the really rough start that Dignitas had in the LCS, was moved down to the Challengers roster. And this team was first place for a very large portion of the regular season, but they went 2-2 and are now sitting in second behind Cloud9 in the standings. And I don't want to necessarily pinpoint all of this onto one singular substitution, Hawk, but I mean, does Spawn on this roster change the way that Dignitas have played throughout this week?
And you know what, Grapes? I think we shouldn't pin it all on one substitution because I think it would be stupid to. Sure, like Tomo has looked better than Spawn, and Tomo and Diamond were far and away the best bot lane in the league. They were smurfing on everyone, but like, I mean, I think that Dignitas has just started dropping a couple games because everyone else is starting to get a lot better. You know, they start like there's going to be always a team that starts hot. People are going to catch up, and it's kind of like an accordion, right? Like that's just how these things work. And I think to pin it all on Spawn is stupid. I think a lot of the backlash that he got in the LCS was valid. I think it's fair to say he looked pretty bad in the LCS, but I think it's important that Spawn is able to come back and get some confidence, you know, because I think this player is still great. He had some great games this weekend despite the 2-2 record, and I think Dignitas Challengers is still a really top tier team. But again, I think it's just that everyone is starting to look amazing. Like we're talking about how Fly looks great, 100 Thieves is surging, Golden Guardians is blazing hot, like Cloud9, they're in first place right now, right? Like there's just too many teams to be able to win every game in this league. And I think that should be the takeaway. And yes, I think Spawn like is a downgrade, big quotes, right? Like downgrade. This one substitution shouldn't all of a sudden mean that Dignitas isn't a top team anymore. And I don't think that'll be the case.
My personal thoughts about this when the substitution was announced, because it was after the release of the last podcast, was that I really wasn't confident in Tomo turning that roster around. I think that the players in terms of skill are very, very similar, and like you know, plugging and playing that change,
especially without Diamond, like you're taking half the duo, right?
The fact that I don't think that it was large enough to make a difference, and also, you know, just messing with the synergy of that Dignitas Challengers roster.
Yeah,
you know, they've been a 5-man unit playing together. I mean, I don't know if you've heard some of the voice comms that they've released on Twitter, but they are having a good time playing with that group of people.
I don't want to interject on you too much because I know I just talked a lot, but I do like to get on my soapbox for a minute. If they weren't going to promote all 5 players from Dignitas, they should have promoted Tomo and Diamond together.
Yeah, I
regardless of how good you think Ignar is, I think you promote your bot lane together. That's my piece. I want to just say that.
This is the first time I think that Tomo and Diamond have started like on different teams, or like on different teams, like since like 2020. I think since they were on Cloud9
I don't know.
together.
I don't know the date, but it's been a minute.
Yeah, so it's been a while, and I think also just like that team as a whole has, you know, worked really well together. And you know, Spawn played fine in the games that, you know, Dignitas was in. They went 1-1 against Team Liquid and 1-1 against Golden Guardians, and I think it's fair to say that those are two teams that are probably also towards the top of the table in terms of people that we think are really, really capable of making a big run. So I don't think losing there is necessarily a bad thing. I mean, APA had a crazy game on Cassiopeia, and that kind of just was it. And then in terms of Golden Guardians, I mean, Prismal popped off. Young had a great game as well. I think it was less Spawn, like, you know, playing bad, and more like these other teams, as you said, kind of stepping up. And, you know, the synergy is an issue that maybe might have to be addressed as we move our way towards playoffs, but I still wouldn't rule this Dig roster out because Spawn is some sort of crazy, terrible player on this team. I mean, he was good in Academy last year. There's no reason why he shouldn't be good again.
Yeah, exactly. I think it'd be foolish to think that Spawn is going to inherently make this roster. Like, if it's worse, it's superficially worse. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I want to see Spawn succeed. I mean, like, I think that goes for all of us too. I want to see Spawn succeed. I see no reason why he can't be just as good, or at the very least, this roster as a whole can't be just as good. So,
yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. As we can move on to our next topic here, which is about some of the provisional teams that we have, not necessarily the challengers ones. And coming off of a really, really interesting week for two of our provisional teams specifically, and that is Fear and Wildcard. I know that we have talked about these teams pretty heavily, but maybe a good time to check in again right before the end of the season, especially considering that Cincinnati Fear 2-0'd Wildcard Gaming in the first day of play this week, in pretty convincing fashion. I mean, there was some really, really great games out of that top side of the map. Benui and Trevor look really good as well, and now they are pretty significantly ahead of Wildcard in the standings. And so my question to you, Hawk, is are they really far and away the better team, and what happened to Wildcard?
Grapes, I'm gonna make a really maybe I could put this on the screen.
A few minutes later.
Okay, this meme.
I've
You ever
never
seen
seen
that
this
before?
No, I have not. So what does this refer to exactly?
Okay, sorry. This refers to how I see Wildcard season a little bit right now. And this is not me saying that they're going to be bad or anything, but when the season started, we're like, holy fuck, this team, they're crazy, three-dimensional, pulling out these pocket picks. We got the Zach, we got the Garen, like, bada bing, bada boom, baby. But then, like, as we've sort of gotten into the dog days of the season a little bit, it's like, well, wait a minute. Like, this team is playing off meta and they're kind of countering the meta. What if we countered their meta counter? Can they actually play the meta? Well, not really. It turns out. They've not looked as good. So I feel like that relates to this meme where they looked super badass for a little while. And it's like, ooh, wait, they're actually a little bit more naked than we thought they were. So that's my roundabout way of saying I'm not going to be a doomer on Wildcard. I think they're still a really good team. And I think they're one to be feared, but I'm like less impressed than I was at the start of the season. And Fear, on the other hand, is looking like a very whole team. Faisal in particular, radiating big dick energy in the top lane, dude. That guy going crazy. Perry also looking amazing. So yeah,
I think this is a really interesting conversation because I know that this was something also that we brought up at the beginning of the season as well, the regular season with Wildcard. You okay there, all?
Sorry, I'm still laughing at the fact that I needed to bring up that meme to explain why
it was valid. Hey,
yeah.
Sorry, I don't know what the editing looks on the other side, but it was a great time. Wildcard, this was I think a concern that we had at some point at the beginning of the season where we thought that their record is good, but it does seem like eventually teams might start to figure them out a little bit. And back in week 2, actually, TSM challengers beat Wildcard, or was it week 2? It was TSM 2-0ing Wildcard, and it seemed like they figured it out. If you camp Moose Hater, don't let him really get ahead, and then just make sure that you pick the fights that you want to take and not the fights that Wildcard wants to take. Wildcard is not necessarily as good of a team, and of course that's a very hard thing to do. The level of execution to get through that is high, but it did seem like we saw that a little bit here in this week of play. The series against Fear, that game 1 specifically, Wildcard had a lot of angles where it seemed like against any other team that would just be Wildcard wiping the fight, getting Baron, ending the game. But Shochi was playing Tryndamere, so when there were these big collapses around objectives, it was Shochi pressing the R button, not getting one shot, and then killing everybody after all the cooldowns were done. And we saw something, and I think against 100 Thieves, we just kind of saw them outplay the players, specifically.
Yeah,
I think
100 Thieves.
I think Lens has been a really good factor for them in the bot lane, but Unforgiven kind of just shut him out. And Sniper played 2 games of Olaf and basically ran over Moose Hater as soon as he wasn't on Garen. So I am a little bit curious to see how Wildcard tries to adapt. We can see them starting to maybe change up the way that their pool looks, but as we saw this week, not necessarily the best results.
Yeah, definitely. I don't think Wildcard's doomed. I think they're still going to be a huge threat in the playoffs. And there's something to be said they just had an off week. That happens. In the second game against 100 Thieves, for example, right? Moose Hater's playing the Kled into the Olaf, which I'm not sold on that matchup, by the way, but I don't know that matchup super well, so I'm not going to comment too much on it. However, with that being said,
it looked good for Olaf that game.
It looked good for Olaf, but my point was going to be Moose Hater got level 1 invaded, which again, 100 Thieves kind of identified a symptom and removed it, right? And they eliminated the why am I making a disease reference? I don't know. I don't want to call a player a virus. That's wrong. But I'm all over the place right now. But and that made the lane unplayable. Sniper got first blood. That's the point I was making. So it is definitely 100 Thieves played well to 2-0 this team, but I think Wildcard, regardless of being figured out, I just want to see them be able to play some more of the fundamentals that other teams are playing. And honestly, like you were sort of identifying like camp Moose Hater and play your own fights. A big part of beating Wildcard, I think, is like in less than them, which like sounds like easy advice. But Wildcard has been really good, really good at getting teams to int and punishing their mistakes. Like really good. But if you can just not make as many mistakes against them, Wildcard has actually really struggled to generate their own leads. So,
and
yeah, I don't know if that made sense. But.
On the other side, Fear look really good. They 2-0
Wildcard. They look so good.
And they also took a game off of Cloud9 Challengers, who is our number 1 team right now. And just another huge shout out to Minui and Trevor. I mean, we've mentioned this over and over again, but I really thought that was going to be by far and away like 2 of the worst players in this entire league when the rosters got announced, because of just some of the experience that I've seen of them throughout the past couple of years. But they have looked really good. I think they're probably like a top half bot lane at this point, or right around like that border of like middle of the pack, which is way higher than we expected. They beat Lost and Zazel in lane in both of the games, and then the top side of the map has looked as impressive as ever. Perry basically one-shot Lost like multiple times. That guy was not allowed to play the game at all in that game too. Faisal looked really good in both of the games that they played. And yeah, just overall, really excited about this team. They do seem a little bit more like just like well-rounded. It's because of the ability to play around Minui and Trevor a little bit. Like you could play into any of those lanes, and it actually just works for them.
Yeah, this team, I mean, they're so good. I will also happily admit I was wrong about Fear, and what I'll say about Fear as well, Grapes, sort of at the beginning of the season, I know you especially, but both of us thought like, okay, Minwei and Trevor might not be that good. And then also we were like, look, if Perry, Faisal, and Shochi play to like this peak, this like hypothetical peak, then they could be really good. But we expect them to be like good, like deserving to be here kind of players. Well, all 3 of these players I feel like have played to like this hypothetical peak where it's like not only do they deserve to be here, they're actually the stars that we thought they might be able to be. And then also Minwei and Trevor are playing out of their minds, and it's like, holy fuck, wait, this team's amazing. Like I don't know. I'm so impressed at this team. I also Cloud9, just to talk about them for like 1 second. How do they keep managing to find themselves in bangers against the other top teams in the league? Like there's the game 2 against Fear that Fear won. They got backdoored by Wildcard. Like they I don't know. Like they just keep finding themselves in these like ridiculous games against high-profile teams. It's funny to watch, but I mean, credit to Fear for being able to prove that they are one of the teams that can play ridiculously against Cloud9.
Hey, there's only, and it's really cool because there's only one game actually separating these 2 teams right now, Fear and Wildcard. And this last week is going to be very important for both of them to try and figure out who they, will be matching up against in the playoffs. Because as we mentioned, that top 9 very, very close together right now. As we move on to our next topic to talk about some teams that are not in that top 9. FlyFam got a win this week. They have doubled their win total now after taking down Immortals Challengers. It was let's go. But on the other hand, another team that has not been looking very good down at the bottom of the standings is Team FLYQUEST. They of course had to sub in a new AD carry in LJX in place of Mia, and that kind of has just accentuated some of the problems that this team has had throughout the season. And all of a sudden, they're within striking distance. And hey, Hawk, the last matchup of the entire regular season on Challengers League is Team FLYQUEST facing off against FlyFam. So my question to you is, who wins that? Who is better? Who's more likely to make it back into the NACL come the summer split?
Oh, you're really putting the question on me straight up like that. I'm gonna give the roundabout answer because I don't know. Basically, first of all, I'm really happy that FlyFam got a win. I know when we did our tier list, I was so excited to see this team play, and I know they've changed a little bit, but I'm really happy for the players. So congratulations to them for beating IMT. We'll get to IMT later. But as for these 2 teams, I think the question comes down to, I think Citywitty and Surdy are better than everybody on both these teams. So it's like whether or not you believe in Citywitty and Surdy over the 5-man unit that is FlyFam. Because I think particularly Team FLYQUEST bottom lane, for as much as I really like Rovex and I wanted them to succeed, quite frankly, looks really bad. And mid hasn't been that great either. I think like that is such an obvious weakness Whereas FlyFam has a bit more of a well-rounded team. However, they don't have the X Factor carry potential that I see from City Witty and Surdy. So that's sort of the way I'm going to preface this question. Then maybe I'll hear your thoughts, and then we could like make our series predictions, I guess.
Yeah, so theoretically, like Team Liquid First record is a little bit misleading because of the fact that in this week 7, their two last matchups of the regular season are against CLG Faith and FlyFam. So theoretically, if they are the better team, they should just 4-0 end their regular season.
Yeah, they've beaten more challenger teams like already.
Yeah, they've beaten. Yeah, so their record went at 8-22, which is fine, like relatively respectable out of a provisional team that has had some roster issues.
That would be fine. Yeah,
I'm not super sold on this team at this point. I mean, Surdy and City Witty in their games that they have been playing are doing so much to try and win them these games. Aspect also has had moments here and there. Had a Cassiopeia game against CLG where he got like 3 really early kills, but just really wasn't able to do much after that. And City Witty specifically has just played like a maniac in a lot of these games.
City's awesome. City's great.
But man, it just feels really bad to have this this late substitution here. I know that Mia, of course, just had to leave for some personal reasons and everything like that. But LJX was retired before coming into this league. He is not an NACL caliber AD carry, and it is showing in all of these games that Team Liquid First are playing against these opponents. I mean, the bot lanes that they faced off against, Mish and Breezy, and then Lost and Zazel this week, they both just completely dominated in the bot lane, like basically incredibly easily. Like it didn't even feel challenging for them. Like first towers were gone really instantaneously, and I just don't know if that is enough to kind of get them over that hump.
Like Grapes, this past weekend in their series against CLG Challengers, in what was otherwise a fairly even game state, like only slightly losing, both Aspect and LJX were both nearly getting Flame Horizoned at like 25 minutes by their role opponents, which like that's insane. And now, I mean, CLG Challengers, their players were farming like 12 CS a minute. It was ridiculous, like Chovy tier shit. But still, like, I mean, and I'm gonna be honest. I think there's a reason why Team Liquid First had to go to a player like LJX instead of say getting scooped, and I think it's because some of these NACLQ teams smell blood in the water with this team, and same with FlyFam at that. I mean, they were able to get Hyper, who's a very high profile jungler actually, but still, I think these teams are starting to smell blood in the water in NACLQ, and I think there's good reason for it. To answer the question that's currently on our screen, I think that FlyFam is better than Team Liquid First. I think Surdy and City Witty are so good. I think these guys are excellent, and really great pieces. I also think that like the other players on Team Liquid First are good, but from what we've seen of them as a team, like it's just not happening. And I think FlyFam, they just to me feel like they have more of the secret sauce at this point. Like Graves, I just don't really feel like I believe in TL First right now. That's really it. I just don't feel like I believe.
We talked a little bit about FlyFam last week, but I think after this week of games it's interesting to kind of think about them again a little bit. Where a lot of what we were saying last week kind of rang true. They still play really aggressive. They still try to get early leads, and they still get early leads a lot. And this time, finally, they were able to capitalize off of a really, really nice TP flank from Lunacia. Actually was able to take his lead out of the laning phase and into the late game. Just like kind of took over that game and was able to win off of that. And I think actually like to an extent having Hyper on this team probably helps in a way as well in terms of the fact that this team maybe seems a little bit more coordinated, kind of in a way that is similar to how Winsome maybe helped fly challengers formulate their plans a little bit better. I know Hyper's a pretty vocal jungler, and so having him on this team might help out some of the younger pieces on this roster. I'm really excited to see Lunacia play against Surdy because there's going to be a lot of solo kills in that game. But I think right now, I like Instinct and Sword haven't been great, but I think that they are better than LJX and Rovex still. And just with all the aggression that FlyFam have been throwing in a lot of these games, I feel like it might be hard for TL First to really match that. And so maybe I see a 1-1, but if I had to pick a winner, I would go with FlyFam at this point, which is kind of crazy to say.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I think to wrap up the discussion for myself, I'm going to predict the series of 1-1 as well. but I'm more excited about FlyFam. And that to me is a big thing. Like what team I'm excited about when I watch them and I feel like they might have a spark. Because as you said, Grapes, it feels like FlyFam, they're at least trying to do something and it's not working. Team Liquid First, I don't know. It feels like they're getting rolled just a little bit. And that's a little concerning to me. But shall we move on to question number 5 and more?
Yeah, I mean that. So there's more questions than this. As we said, we have 8 headlines. We're gonna take our time throughout them as well, just to make sure that there's a lot of interesting stuff to discuss and we get all the details in there. But we're talking about promotion. There was another promotion this week, not for the provisional teams getting to NACL, but one of the NACL players, Bolulu of Immortals Challengers, getting a shot at LCS. It was announced that Ablaze Olive will be stepping aside from the LCS team for personal reasons, and because of that, Bolulu will be in the LCS for this week. Now, we're not entirely sure who the replacement on Challengers will be. However, Hawk, it was announced that Comp9 will be leaving Team Fish Taco, and he's not technically announced to a team just yet. Who knows? We'll see this weekend if we have been proven right. That is my guess at the moment. I don't know if we want to necessarily talk about them in the context of having Comp9 there, but I mean, what do you think about this move? Do you think Bolulu actually helps this Immortals LCS team?
My premonition is that they're gonna do the funny thing where we record this on Tuesday, and by the time we do the episode airs tomorrow, it's already gonna have been announced as Comp9 as the new mid laner. I do want to point out, by the way, this is entirely speculation.
We have no idea.
This isn't like a
Zero
leak
clue.
or like we don't know. Like we're talking out of our asses right now. So like maybe it'll be announced by tomorrow that it's somebody else and we look like dumbasses. But I mean, look, I'll get to Comp9 later actually. But basically the short version of that is Comp9 looked way too good on Fish Taco and was actually like such a stud on an otherwise veteran roster that there's no way he's not playing on a team unless like he decided to step away. So it has to be that. That's my take on that. But as far as Bolulu going to LCS, we sort of talked about this earlier. I think. Did we talk about this on air, or maybe this was before we went on? Bolulu was the best part of this IMT Challengers roster, I think, Graves. The team that just dropped the game to FlyFam. I'm pretty doomer on Immortals Challengers at this point. I'm not feeling that team. And I think Bolulu's a great player. And as far as his situation goes, I'm really worried about him stepping into a kind of a dumpster fire of an LCS team right now, and potentially looking bad because of it. I mean, IMT just doesn't look good. I feel like this is just a rough situation all around, and obviously I hope Ablaze Olive is doing well. Shout out to Ablaze Olive. Stepping away for whatever reason. Obviously hope everything's okay there, and that's totally valid. Players should absolutely take care of themselves first. But it's just I'm so worried. I mean, maybe Bolulu will smurf it, be a good piece on a bad team. But I feel like I'm worried that that won't happen and Blue will look bad. And then Comp9 might come into a tough IMT team or whoever and also look bad. So I'm cautious about this, Grapes.
I do think that Bolulu will help this Immortals roster a little bit.
Okay.
If you go back to just some of the games that they played this week, I mean, Bolulu, some of his most played champions so far in NACL have been like Zoe and Lissandra. And those are champions that can help facilitate their junglers. We saw Chad really, be able to become unleashed in a couple of these games when Bolulu is able to get opportunity in the mid lane. I don't know exactly how we'll scale up against LCS talent, of course. There's always a conversation of how the strength of the players here is definitely weaker than the strength of the players in the LCS. But when you have a player like Kenvi on Immortals Challengers and if you have with a mid laner like Bolulu, I feel like that might open up some possibilities here for Immortals. I think that they should really try to focus in around their mid-jungle 2v2 working successfully. And maybe there's an opportunity for them to try and turn things around a little bit. I'm not super confident about that, obviously, but it is a situation that maybe could help things out for them.
Yeah. That's a totally valid point. And I mean, as always, whenever an NACL player gets promoted, we want to see them pop off. So I am hoping for the best for Bolulu, but sort of to talk about what this means in NACL, because that is sort of, I guess, like our focus. I'm going to talk like Comp9's coming in. It could be totally wrong, but I think, honestly, this is a really exciting promotion, even though like I'd be worried because the team's been struggling. But I think it's fair to say at this point in the season that Wixie and ADD have not been the carries that we might have hoped for in the preseason. And Bolulu was that guy for that team for a bit once he got here. And I think Comp 9 actually could be too. Comp 9 had some massive games for Team Fish Taco. Think of the after the Amumu incident, going like 6-0 on Vel'Koz in like 10 minutes. Like really big performances. Also willing to bust out the enchanters to facilitate a carry jungler if Chad ever wanted to put on the carry pants. Like I feel like this player could be sort of that guy for a team that is going to need another that guy as their guy leaves. So I'm really excited for it. And whether it is or isn't Comp 9, but if it's not Comp 9, I think that's my diagnosis, is they need someone that can be him.
Right. We'll see. I do like the Immortals bot lane. They've had moments.
They've had
Lucy and
moments.
Joey, I think, are good players, but team really hasn't built much of an identity, I feel like, at this point.
No.
And there's just not a lot of time to fix that, especially if you're subbing somebody in immediately. So we'll see what happens. Again, we really don't know who the Immortals Challenge is.
It's total speculation.
A bit here. But speaking of Comp 9 and his former team of Team Fish Taco, oh wait, no, sorry. There's another point after this.
Yeah.
We're gonna move on to our sixth headline of the episode, which kind of was going back to some of the conversation we were having earlier. I mean, Hawk, there's right now a bit of a divide in the standings. There are 9 teams, kind of clustered around the top. That is Cloud9, Dignitas, Golden Guardians, 100 Thieves, Fear, TLC, Wildcard, CLG, and Challengers, and FlyQuest, sorry. And then
and
as you
Challengers.
Said, and as we said earlier about a 4-game, it's been a long day. 4-game difference between 9 and 10. I mean, that's a pretty stacked amount of teams that I think a lot of people had different expectations about coming in. How many of these teams do you think actually could realistically win here in the NACL come playoffs in a couple weeks?
You ready for this?
Yeah.
All of them.
9.
I think all of them could win. If we're talking like in playoffs, look, it's double elimination, but it's still a bracket. It takes one team getting hot. I think all of these teams could win. Do I think that means they're all on the same level? No. Like I think that we sort of talked about it. I think Cloud9, Dig, Golden Guardians, and 100 Thieves, and yeah, I would say those teams, and like maybe FlyQuest, if they continue to pop off, are like the best. But does that mean that like Team Liquid Challengers couldn't get hot and win a couple good series and get good draws and win the whole thing? Like, honestly, it totally could fucking happen. I think all 9 of these teams look like they could win. And these standings, by the way, are going to get shuffled like crazy in this final week as well. Like this, I mean, shoot. Cincinnati Fear could be in first place next week. They go 4-0, Cloud9 goes 0-4 easy. Like, I don't know. Like, I mean, it's just... there's so much variance here, and I definitely think there are various levels of good that these teams are, but if we're purely looking at who could win the whole thing, it takes one of these teams to get hot. I think all 9 of them could do it.
It's really cool to see the parity here in this league. I'm still holding out a little bit of hope for Evil Geniuses if King can come back.
Are you saying 10? 10 could win?
Be a piece. But, you know, there's... I think maybe
our portfolios
10,
are both
honestly.
holding out hope on that one.
Yeah, I think it might actually... be 10 teams that could potentially win this split. I'm looking at the other teams. Like, I don't think FlyFam, CLG Faith, or Team Liquid First have a chance to win.
No.
TSM, don't think so. Immortals, now with the roster change, probably not. AoE could be an interesting one, but I just don't see them at the same level as some of the teams towards the top, where I could see any other of these teams winning like multiple series in a row. Maybe AoE take games off of the top of the teams.
Yeah.
But I don't know if they will win the series.
The way I see this, actually, maybe I'll answer this question a little bit differently to piggyback off what you're saying. If I were to tier list the teams, bottom 3 provisional teams, like no hope in hell, they're done. I'm sorry, they're not gonna win the whole thing. EG to IMT is like could totally take a series or get an upset. Like would not necessarily want to face them. Then Team Liquid, CLG, Wildcard, and Cincinnati Fear, those 4 teams, it's like I absolutely would not want to run into them in the bracket. They could beat anybody and like get hot. And then FlyQuest, maybe if they continue to keep it up. And then definitely 100 Thieves, Golden Guardians, Dig, and Cloud9 are like the favorites. So that would be my to tier list it. That's maybe my analysis, but I think any of the top 9 could win.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of parity in the league, and it's really, really cool. I'm just very excited for this bracket because it's going to be a bit
awesome.
crazy.
We have the March Madness this shit, man. It's going to be so good.
Yeah, maybe a potential idea for next week. Let's move on to our next topic about the NACL qualifiers here. Of course, Maryville did take home the crown after defeating Dewey and Tony Top 3-1 in a best of 5. And as we move forward into the next Open Qualifier, Maryville's roster will be remaining the same. But there are 3 teams that, made pretty significant strides in the NACL group stage. TFT, Horizon Gaming, and Zenigma that made some roster changes entering the second OQ. They have all been announced, I believe, at the time of the release of this episode. Team Fish Taco said goodbye to Comp 9 in winter and are bringing in Robbie Bob and Daption, forming a bit of a UST trio with Dardock. Horizon Gaming are moving Dragonman Kim from support back to jungle, adding Yama, a former Team Liquid Academy support from 2020, and adding Quacker up in the top lane. And Zenigma are swapping out their top side of the map, which was Coco and Dunks, in exchange for Boil the Oil and Kitsua. So those are the 3 roster changes that we see here. They do all still retain their potential points to making it into that promotion relegation tournament. But Hawk, these 3 teams did not win, and they are not locked into that top 4 just yet. Do we think that these roster changes potentially change their opportunities for making their way into that event?
And just to explain why the question is phrased this way, Team Fish Taco wants to win the whole thing. They're obviously a competitor. And then for Horizon and Zenigma, if they wanted to make top 4 by the end of the split and be in the promotion relegation, they basically have to win the whole thing. If they don't win the whole thing, they have to make finals and hope a team like Supernova gets out in groups. So basically, they've got to win the whole thing. Is the reason why the question is framed this way. To keep it brief, Zenigma, no, I don't think they're going to win the whole thing. I think their roster is going to be better. I'm excited to see them play. I will seed them higher. I don't think they're going to win the whole thing. Horizon is maybe a little bit more interesting, and I'll actually hold on to that one. Maybe we can go back and forth on that. TFT, I think, yes. I'm not going to call Comp 9 in winter as opposed to, or I should say Robbie Bob and Daption as opposed to Comp 9 in winter, upgrades. However, I think that this team is absolutely still a favorite. And I do think at the very least, Robbie Bob probably is an upgrade over Comp 9, purely because of how experienced he is. And we've seen how much of a Giga Chad carry Red can be. And I would say Winter to Daption is a side grade. So yes, I think if we assume the team to be a similar strength to what it was last time, I think they did do enough to win the whole thing. But I don't think it makes them better than Maryville, though.
Yeah, I'm wondering how much of the TFT roster changes were due to wanting upgrades in certain positions that they deemed necessary, or if it was personal reasons, whether it was
I think that reason.
or Winter just stepping aside for whatever reason that we just really don't know. I'm not entirely sure.
I would say, sorry, I don't want to cut you off. I would say it's probably not we're trying to upgrade, we kicked these players. It's probably more so we found great replacements to great players, if that makes sense.
Right, and I think that overall, my thoughts of them haven't changed too much. But maybe some of that UST connection with Dardock, Robbie, and Daption, work out a little bit. I mean, UST, they competed as University of St. Trevor in the last qualifier. They made the quarterfinals with these guys, and maybe that is a little bit of a bump. Maybe not. I don't feel super strongly about the roster changes for this team. I think I'm going to see them relatively similarly. Horizon, I think, is probably a slight upgrade because of just the fact that DMK was role swapped into support. They had a very brand new top laner who I've never seen before, and their jungler was King Nidhogg, who doesn't have a lot of competitive experience. And I think that swapping back Dragonman to his original role, so we could play with Sophist Sage in this CLOL finalist spotlight, pairing that we saw pretty often. Yunbi looked really, really good, even though the team didn't necessarily meet expectations, and I think that Quacker is an upgrade in the top side. I really don't know anything about Yama, but I would say established support versus role swap, I would be okay with this change. I don't think it's enough to get them into that top 4 conversation, though, because of the fact that there's a lot of teams that already have more points than them by like a pretty significant margin. And I would say the same about Zenigma as well. I think Kitsuo provides a lot of experience and maybe some more leadership to this already like pretty exciting core of Enthralled, Cerulean, and Danny. And I don't really know too much about Boil the Oil, and I don't feel super confident in talking about that roster move, but they might be better as well. I don't see their ceiling being as high as that point where you have to be like a finalist to potentially get into that top 4. So I still think that when we're thinking about teams that could make it into the promotion relegation tournament, we're thinking still of the same squads. And even though maybe some of these changes are potential upgrades, I don't think it does too much either way.
Yeah, exactly. The one thing I'll say about the Boil the Oil Cocoa Puff sub is, like, there might be reasons for this, but man, how could you bench Cocoa Puffs? That guy was awesome. He came on the show, talked to us. I'm a huge Cocoa Puffs fan. So I don't know. I'm a little personally bummed by that one, but there's probably a good reason for it. One would hope. NA Amateur, please have good reasons for things. But I definitely think the Kitsuo getting Kitsuo for this roster could actually be really huge. Again, like, I definitely think it's an upgrade. Like this team is going to be better. The big thing is just like how much better. Probably not a lot. Like, maybe they'll make quarters. That would be cool. I don't think they're going to be top 4. Horizon, as you pretty much hit everything I want to talk about. I do think the biggest change, as you highlighted, DMK back in the jungle. That's the big one for me. Is like I could see that being a place where the roster gets a lot better. But I still, again, if it's like, are they going to win the whole tournament? No, I don't think they're going to flame out in groups again, though. I would say I would feel good about saying that. But I'm not sitting here feeling like I think they would be gunning for a top 4 spot.
It feels like
think
that
it's a
team
finals.
is a little less variable at this point than maybe we thought, like, oh, maybe with this Horizon roster, like, these
right
people would be good.
But now maybe it's like, DMK support like is gonna be the thing, like.
But now it seems like they're more like set, and
Yeah.
honestly, it makes me feel a little bit more confident because I feel like out of like the range that Horizon could have finished last year, they ended more towards the bottom. So we'll see. And again, if you want to see where these teams are seated, we have the reveal show at 7 p.m. Pacific this Wednesday, so the day that we're releasing this podcast. And if you are late to that, well, you already know the seeds, and we don't at this point. And so
you can watch
that'll
us
be pretty
talk about
exciting. Yeah, we'll watch us talk about it on the reaction afterwards. But let's move on to this last topic of the episode. It has been a pretty long one, just in terms of the headlines, but got a lot of good conversations out of it.
So much to talk about.
With something a little bit more fun, I guess. The
Yeah.
OQs are always a wild time. There's 5 games for 32 teams. That is 80 games total, I believe, across all of the weekend. What is a premonition that you have? Something that's going to happen in one of these games, something that's going to happen throughout the OQ that you think is just like, it's nothing like super like prediction heavy, like, oh, Maryville's going to 5-0 again, but it's more like, random in a way.
The team, my premonition is that the team that we follow, which we genuinely do not know who this is, but the team that we follow for OQs does not get eliminated in 4 games.
I hope so. I hope so.
Please. I couldn't believe that happened last time.
We did cover
man.
Super Sunshine, and last qualifier did not go super well.
Didn't go great.
We will eventually
love the players and the people involved with that org, but it was a little rough.
My premonition is that there will be a team that is like seated in the bottom half that goes 4-1. I don't know who it is.
Whoa,
just yet.
Okay.
I have some eyes on teams that could potentially just really make random jumps here and there. CB Gaming got close last time.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's my premonition. Should be a fun time to watch. I think that overall this OQ probably will end up being a little bit weaker as players that realize that they're not going to qualify into the promotion relegation tournament might have stepped aside, allowing for different teams and different rosters to come in. So I think a little bit more variance just means that there could be just random teams that take weird jumps here and there.
I'm super down for that. A bottom 16 team getting in. I'm trying to look at the Google sheet that we have here and think of what team it would be. I'm not gonna leak. But I have the Google sheet in front of me. That is a spicy take. I've not actually finished my selection committee ballot, so I don't know who that team would be. But I'm after this episode and after the reveal show, you should tell us what team you think it's gonna be.
You can hold my word to that. I believe like right after the reveal show, our reaction will be here on Salty Runback, and I'll do that. I'll pick.
Yeah. Perfect. That'd be perfect. You should tell us who is going to be the team that goes 4-1 from the bottom, because I don't. Correct me if I'm wrong. In this tournament format, so last OQ and all the OQs last year, I don't think anyone has done that. I don't think anyone has gone 4-1 from the bottom.
I don't think so.
So
3-2 is much more common, but
yes, 3-2 has definitely happened.
We asked for something crazy. I feel like there's.
That would be awesome. I'm here for it.
The entire committee is wrong on one team, and that always just makes things a little bit spicier. But that's gonna do it for our episode today, Hawk. 8 headlines, and we spent a little bit more time talking about each of them, which means that show is a little bit longer. But hey, it's a pretty good time, and I'm just really excited for this last week of NACL games. I mean,
I am too.
A lot of things can really change, and that matchup Fly Fan versus TL First, and there's just a couple of other ones in there as well. Look really, really exciting.
I'm so personally excited for the OQs this weekend as well, and making a bracket for NACL playoffs in particular. Like, OQs is always just fucking crazy. Like, you never know what's gonna happen. My favorite thing is just watching the match results channel as the teams post. And it's like, holy shit, CB Gaming beat Team Fish Taco? Like, what? Like, that's always a lot of fun. And like you said, last week at NACL, getting into playoffs, that is going to be a bloodbath, the playoffs of NACL, because there's going to be some really great teams that lose games, and it's going to be like we have to cope with that. But it's our own little March Madness here in North America. I don't think we'd want it any other way.
Yeah, I don't think so. A reminder, once again, as we, look ahead towards a lot of the events that are happening on Salty Runback this week. It's a pretty busy week for us, but wouldn't want to have it any other way. Again, basically, as soon as this episode is done premiering on Twitch, the reveal show will be live at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern. Immediately following that is our coverage of the reaction. We'll have another episode out on YouTube for you guys as well eventually with that. And also, this weekend, Saturday and Sunday, will be where we will be a part of streaming some of the Open Qualifier games. Again, not entirely sure which team we will be with specifically. Might have some guests, might have some other news and stuff surrounding that eventually, but I don't know, Hawk. Bit of a weird episode this time around, but I had a good time. What about you?
Yeah, it was different, but I think it was a lot of fun. I mean, I think the conversations were good as always, and we shot the shit a little bit. It's always a good time. Always a great way to spend a Tuesday afternoon. But you know what? As Grape said, catch the reveal show over on Alk Battery stream this time at 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific. It's going to be a great one. Then they'll raid over here to Salty Runback Pod, and we're going to talk about the teams. It's going to be great. As Grape said as well, watch the Open Qualifiers. There will probably be a guest at the very least on Saturday. I won't be here. I might be here on Sunday, but Grapes will be here, and it's going to be great. Follow us on all of our socials at Salty Runback Pod on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music. Listen to the podcast. We have all of our episodes up on those various platforms. The full episodes, audio only, or if you're an audio only listener, as well as the video version if you want to see our beautiful faces. Shoot us an email at saltyrunbackpod@gmail.com if you got something to say. We'd love to converse with you. And I don't know, you got a headline you want to see featured? Maybe we'll feature it on next week's episode. But at the end of it all, if you don't think that 9 teams could win the NACL and only Golden Guardians challengers can do it, first of all, you'd be unfathomably based. But second of all, you can take what we said with a grain of salt. I've been Hawk. That's been Grapes. Have a great night, everyone.